So I think that MistaGG is a pretty universally liked and respected YouTuber within the commentary community who does admittedly have a history of consistently uploading high quality content. MistaGG runs a channel with over 1 million subs on which he creates variety content with somewhat of a focus on obscure movie reviews, and I used to like him and his videos a lot until recently when I saw a video of his which made me lose a lot of respect for him and made me perceive him as a bit of an entitled YouTuber. So I've decided to explain today why I started disliking MistaGG. But before we get into it, I just want to say a massive thank you for the support on the channel recently. It means a lot to me, I appreciate it so much, and if you want to keep seeing more content then please subscribe. I am trying to hit 900 subs this month and I am absolutely certain that we can do it. Anyway, back to the video. So MistaGG has been uploading content to YouTube for at least 8 years, and honestly I have nothing to say against this guy's content. And I understand that this might come as a surprise to most of you watching, since usually I only cover people on my channel that either produce terrible content or that have done something extremely malicious, or even both. But today's subject, MistaGG, honestly produces solid content and he hasn't really done anything objectively wrong, at least in my eyes. I mean, I haven't seen his entire catalog, I just remember having watched a few MistaGG videos some years back and always having perceived these videos as quality content, and I especially respected him because he made variety videos, meaning that he never hopped on trends or anything and he just made genuine videos about stuff he cared about. So considering I just stated that I respect this guy's content and that he has never done anything that's worthy of criticism, you are all probably wondering right now, well, why does the title of the video say I dislike MistaGG? Well, when I say I dislike MistaGG, in this case I don't mean the public figure or the channel MistaGG, but I low-key actually mean like the person MistaGG, because I do believe that he has become entitled and that's why I lost respect for him as a person specifically. Let me explain. So I work as a social media manager and editor for a small local brand in Eastern Europe, and about 3 weeks ago my boss tasked me with reaching out to a specific YouTuber and convincing them to promote the brand. So I did some research on YouTuber sponsor interactions beforehand to help me decide on how I was gonna go about it, and that's when I stumbled across this MistaGG video titled "The Worst Sponsor Experience I've Ever Had." And I perceived MistaGG as kind of entitled and arrogant in this video, which is why we are now going to dissect it. So essentially this whole video is a breakdown of MistaGG's interaction with the brand Manscaped. Now my thoughts on this brand are pretty neutral, I guess. I do honestly believe that their product is nothing special, just passable. I mean, they claim that they basically capitalized off a gap in the market to launch their product, but the real reason for their success is their marketing, which I am quite impressed with, to be fair. Their marketing features blunt humor while addressing subjects that people are usually too embarrassed to talk about, and this made their ads get pretty popular and allowed them to further expand their brand by getting YouTubers to constantly promote them. In reality, men's grooming products have been around for quite some time. Manscaped didn't come up with anything revolutionary and they didn't create better products than the competition. They were just the first brand in the men's grooming sphere that figured out how to advertise properly. So overall, I'm pretty neutral on this brand, and especially since they're a company, I'm not about to suck their dick. I couldn't care less about this product. So if MistaGG's video, for instance, proved that the product is trash, then I would have probably agreed with him, but the problem is that MistaGG's video is basically him complaining that they didn't pay him enough money.
I said, $10,000 is my rate for a 60-second integration. They replied, "We've analyzed your follower count, average engagement rate per post, and posting frequency. We've compared your metrics with many of our previous influencer campaigns. We've modeled your price point, and it's gonna be hard to hit ROI. That's return on investment. We'd like to offer you $4,000 for your first campaign with us. This price point projects to perform well as a part of our first campaign, which would then unlock the ability to have an ongoing campaign commitment to you as part of our Premier Partner Program." Smiley face.
Alright, so essentially his main issue with the company is that they were not willing to match his payment demands. So the numbers 10,000 and 4,000 are made up according to MistaGG, but the ratios of these numbers are equivalent to the actual pay. I do, however, think that it's necessary to at least try and figure out the real amount paid so that everyone can understand my perspective on why I think this is entitled. Now, one might think that I would be able to immediately come up with the actual numbers, since I literally literally just convinced an influencer to take a brand deal like 2 weeks ago. But full transparency, the thing is that I convinced an Instagram guy with around 100k followers to promote a product for like $130. And the problem with that is that Instagram and YouTube sponsor deals are very different. Like if I went up to a 100k sub YouTuber and offered $130 for an ad, my emails would definitely be ignored. So I have to figure out some way to reach an estimate. The only info I could really go off here is that a bigger commentary channel once told me that he had received $800 for a Raid Shadow Legends sponsorship while he had 80k subs, and that was their first offer. So I know that the increase of subscribers isn't exactly linear with the increase of sponsorship payments, but it's really the only way I can get an at least somewhat educated guess on what the industry standard pay is here. So during the time of the Manscaped sponsorship, MistaGG had around 600k subs, meaning that if we take the $800 with 80k subs as the industry standard, we would arrive at $6,000 for an ad on a channel with 600k subs. Now obviously the real number could be a bit lower or higher, that's just the best estimation I could possibly come up with. So what we have to figure out now is that if our estimate reflects MistaGG's demands or Manscaped's offer. And I am personally relatively certain that Manscaped probably offered MistaGG the industry standard pay, simply because the reason we all know Manscaped is because they do so many promotional influencer deals. They're constantly being mentioned by social media people. Now if they were to offer low ball prices and terrible deals, then they wouldn't be so prominent with these content creators, since 90% of people would just reject their deals. And that's why I think that the $4,000 MistaGG shows here should translate to around $6,000 in real money, and his demands would then be $15,000 for one YouTube ad. So now that we have an estimate for the real numbers, we can clearly see that MistaGG's demands are double that of what we assumed to be the industry standard. The reason for MistaGG wanting to get paid more money is probably because he actually puts a lot of effort into making entertaining advertisements and convincing his viewers to buy the products that he's promoting. Now I do respect MistaGG for this, because a lot of YouTubers appear to just not care in the slightest about the brands that they're promoting, so much so that they'll just do a lazy ad read in the beginning of their videos. So seeing MistaGG actually create entertaining and creative advertisements is honestly quite refreshing. Now the conclusion MistaGG probably arrived at here is that his ads are better than most other brand sponsored YouTuber ads, therefore they increase sales massively and he should get paid a lot more than his peers. Now the problem with this line of thinking is that half of the viewers skip the ad anyway. So the main thing an entertaining ad does is keep the viewer watching the ad, which benefits the creator but doesn't necessarily benefit the brand. Cause the amount of people that would see a normal ad and not buy the product advertised only to then see a high effort ad and decide to buy that product is very low. In reality, most people would simply watch through the ad instead of skipping. Now the only argument I could see here is that if more people watch the ad, more people are aware of the brand's existence, and if they then think about buying, in this example, men's grooming products, they might decide to buy Manscaped. But the problem here is that there's no way this can be traced back to MistaGG, and also Manscaped was already such a globally recognized brand at this time that I don't think a lot of people would find out about the brand's presence through a MistaGG video. So in reality, my conservative estimate of what a high effort ad can achieve on a YouTube video would maybe justify like a $2,000 increase in pay maximum, and that's generous of me, but expecting them to pay $9,000 more is just absolutely entitled and unreasonable to me. So in the end, MistaGG actually decided to accept the offer from Manscaped, and they changed their offer from $4,000 to $4,500. Which with my calculations would mean that MistaGG got paid $6,800 for the ad. Now the reason he accepted was because Manscaped said they will increase the pay for the next ad if the ad performs well. So after the first sponsorship, MistaGG decided that he would be willing to do another sponsorship and expected increased pay.
They would, quote, honor, unquote, the same rate for a second campaign as they did the first. I've come to hate the word honor. Honor the same rate as you did on the first, huh? You really mean it, Puby? Like, what do you expect me to say to that? It's almost like you're knighting me or something. We're gonna honor the same rate. You mean you'll still heavily underpay me? You shouldn't have. Little pubers? I felt disrespected at this point.
Now this is the main reason I think that MistaGG has kind of become entitled. He's stating that he felt disrespected and he was heavily underpaid and that his treatment is unfair, and that just seems so out of touch to me. Like, you are still getting paid thousands of dollars to do promotional content for a company which doesn't really take a lot of effort. Granted, MistaGG put some effort into his ads, but even taking his extra effort into account, I don't think this guy ever spends more than maybe like 5 hours maximum on crafting together an ad. I mean, some YouTubers just spend 30 minutes editing together an ad with pre-recorded footage from the company, so I do respect him for going the extra mile, but it's still just so little work for so much pay. Like, obviously you have to work to get to the point where you're so famous that companies are paying you thousands of bucks for a few hours of work, but it's still an immense privilege once you achieve the famous YouTuber status. I don't think you can ever claim that you're underpaid once you have reached that. So him calling himself heavily underpaid seems just so blatantly out of touch to me, which is a shame because the concept of a YouTuber exposing a scummy brand who tried to work with them is honestly really intriguing. But to me, MistaGG just goes about it the wrong way. I mean, you are not underpaid, you are extremely privileged, in my opinion at least. Like, I do think that as a creator it's fair to fight for your pay, but at the same time, as a company, it's also completely fair to fight for your interests. And that's why I think MistaGG attempting to expose Manscaped when in reality they simply weren't ready to fulfill his demands is just very unnecessary, and it feels like he has a personal unjustified vendetta against the company, especially when you hear Manscaped's reasoning for not increasing his pay.
Unfortunately, with this economic crisis, we are getting direct orders from the execs to cancel deals. Kim Jong-un is breathing down my neck as I type my last email. I'm fighting for you, helpless creator, I really am. We've altered the majority of our marketing spend and are only able to renew things that will 100% hit ROI. During these times, this is the most we can offer and what I got approved. Please let me know if you can work something out, and bippity bop bibbity. By economic crisis, she means COVID. This was right around the time shit started to get real and we were being asked to quarantine. Now, this is the second excuse in a row to stop me from being paid fairly.
So the only reason MistaGG didn't get a pay increase was because the company temporarily appeared unable to operate properly due to the COVID outbreak, which makes perfect sense to me. They probably had to cancel a lot of in-person events with creators and took a serious hit in revenue. I mean, I worked as a waiter parallel to being in high school when the outbreak hit, and over the course of like a week, the place I worked at just lost 100% of their customers, so all the waiters had to become delivery guys to try and at least make some of the money back. So the circumstances at the time of the beginning of 2020 were just unpredictable, and that's why they didn't give MistaGG a raise. Also, I feel like he does treat this whole thing like it was him against the company, when in reality he probably just talked to some low-level employee who was part of the marketing team, and that person probably just had to follow instructions of not increasing pay during these uncertain times, which honestly makes perfect sense to me. I mean, circling back to the story of me closing down a deal a couple of weeks ago, if this guy asked me for like more than double of what we were willing to offer and I accepted, I would be like in deep trouble with management. So like, I can very much relate to the person that's saying, hey, we can't increase the pay due to circumstances beyond our control. Like, I don't feel like MistaGG is being treated unfairly here at all. They probably said the same thing to every other YouTuber that they were in talks with.
We'd like to offer you $6,666.66 per video, 3 videos, 3 months. What do you say? Now look at that. We were at 4,500. That's a jump. Still underpaying me by 44%, but holy shit, the line moved. They come back and they say, we were able to get 9,300 approved, which is still short of my initial rate, but they're paying me at least 80% of what I asked, as opposed to 66% of what I asked. So there's that. I agreed to it because I could sure use that money.
So MistaGG tried to close down a third deal with them, and this time they initially offered 66% of his ask, which would be 10k per my calculations, and they even exceeded the offer to over 90%, and again, MistaGG took the deal. Now, one caveat with this deal ended up being that in addition to making an ad on YouTube, MistaGG also had to do an Instagram promotion story accommodating every upload, and he seems to believe that this is a lot of extra work the brand is requiring, but in reality making an Insta story is the same as a promotional tweet. That's like 10 minutes of work, so I don't consider the fact that they added required Instagram stories to the contract a deal breaker. Honestly, all of this comes across as still extremely privileged to me. I mean, he's getting what I believe to be over 10k for not even half a day of work. Now, he then ended the video by showing this graph explaining that after the third deal, which included 3 videos, he ended up breaking off all collaborations with Manscaped because their last offer ended up being a reduced version of their previous one, which is probably why he's now making the video, because he's pissed that they reduced his payment. And look, on one hand I can understand MistaGG's frustrations because he probably genuinely felt like he was underpaid. Like, this is a raw, honest video, he's not lying or anything. But I do think that he lacks self-awareness because the money he was offered for the little amount of work that he actually had to do for it was still absolutely great. And him now bashing this brand seems like such a disproportionate response. Like, to me it just felt like he played his cards completely wrong during the whole negotiation process and ended up feeling bitter about him missing his opportunities to make more money. But nevertheless, there are still some things that he's totally right about.
When a greedy company pays you on PayPal, PayPal takes out a fee of 3%. So the first payment, Manscaped paid me the necessary extra amount to balance out the fees to pay me what was promised to me. On the second payment, that didn't happen. So my promised $4,500 turned into $4,365. And like I said, these numbers are fake, but the ratios are correct.
Now this to me is absolutely shocking. Honestly, this should have been what the whole video was about. If Mista GG is to be believed, then Manscaped 100% screwed him out of money they legally owed him. Now PayPal does take a 3% fee per business transaction. So Manscaped not covering this fee when they explicitly confirmed that they would in fact take care of it is not only highly unprofessional but also completely illegal. Like, I get that Mista GG probably didn't want to escalate this situation at the time, but had they tried this with someone like me, I would have probably immediately threatened legal actions within like 2 emails. You know, I might be biased because I work in this field, but in my opinion running your business transactions through PayPal is already a severely questionable decision in the first place, but to then also make false promises about covering the PayPal fees, that is absolutely unacceptable behavior from a brand. It's unprofessional and actually unfair to the creator who might not even realize that the brand is supposed to cover this cost. Honestly, Mista GG should have led this whole video with this. Like, most of his video just came across as coping from someone that lost at the negotiation table, when this video could have been a straight dunk on the company Manscaped instead. In all honesty, this should have been the main argument of this video, because it does make Manscaped look terrible, along with the next argument.
It's actually common to have usage rights baked into the contract, either for a limited amount of time or a defined amount of time. However, if it's not in the contract, or like with Manscaped, not explicitly told to me, because to my understanding, I don't think I've ever signed a contract with them, at least in the early campaigns, then yes, at that point, if you want usage rights and you haven't gotten them through contract in writing, then I would not be playing the business game if I did not ask you for money. It would be fucking bizarre if I handed it over to you just because we're working together. No. Give me money.
Now what he's saying here is that Manscaped tried to use footage of him advertising their product for ads they were making on their channel, which is again severely illegal without a contract. Most companies will have a clause about the right to use someone's advertisements in their own promotional material in their videos represented somewhere in their contract, but the fact that Manscaped didn't have usage rights included in the contract and then tried to use Mista GG in their own ads for their own social media without credit, by the way, is again completely unprofessional, morally questionable, and illegal in most countries. If I saw my face on a Manscaped ad without them having my usage rights, I would call up my lawyer like immediately. Like, this should have been the video. Manscaped tried to scam me for the PayPal fees, and Manscaped tried to use my likeness for their ads without having the rights for it. If the video focused on these 2 factors, I would 100% be on board with shitting on Manscaped, because this behavior is just so unprofessional, but instead Mista GG spends 90% of the video appearing to be salty about failing to stand up for himself during the negotiation process with the company Manscaped. So yeah, at the end of the day, this video made me look at Mista GG sideways, because he does really come across as out of touch here, in my opinion at least. But he still does make good content, so I'm not gonna hate on the guy, I'm just gonna respect him a little bit less going forward. And I am very, very interested to hear your opinion on Mista GG and his interactions with Manscaped, so feel free to comment how you feel about this whole thing. And also drop a like on the video if you enjoyed it, and of course subscribe to the channel and follow me on Twitter. I'll see you in the next one.